3 independent labs, Tech Power Up, PC World, and Storage Review, tested the same 6 SSD enclosures in 2026, and the results contradict almost everything Amazon's bestseller badges tell you. One enclosure that looks cheap actually beat a $250 aluminum block in sustained write tests. Another, priced at $70, was called a little steep by reviewers. Yet buyers still pick it over cheaper options for one specific reason I'll explain. I'll also expose one wildly popular enclosure style that influencers recommend constantly that quietly fails the single test that matters most for editors: sustained heat under long transfers. And product number 1 on this list is being called one of the fastest consumer storage devices tested in 2026. All product links are in the description. Number 6, Sabrent EC-SNVE. We're starting with the enclosure most budget buyers Google first. The Sabrent EC-SNVE sits around $27 to $30, running on USB 3.2 Gen 2, capped at 10 Gbps. The SSD review tested it directly against a Sabrent Rocket 4 plus NVMe drive and confirmed stable performance with a tool-free slide and lock design, no screwdriver needed. Tweaktown's testing found the aluminum top doubles as a heatsink, with a thermal pad pressed against the drive to pull heat away during transfers. Here's the real-world catch. 10 Gbps caps your actual speed around 1,000 megabytes per second, no matter how fast the SSD inside is rated. So if you plug in a high-end Gen 4 drive, rated for 7,000 megabytes per second, you're leaving most of that speed on the table. This enclosure makes sense for one specific buyer: someone repurposing an old laptop SSD into a backup drive, or a student who needs reliable storage without spending real money. If you're editing 4K or 8K footage, skip this one and keep watching, because the performance gap between this and our next pick is significant. One more detail worth knowing: this enclosure supports both NVMe and SATA M2 drives in sizes 2242, 2260, and 2280. So it works with almost any spare drive sitting in a drawer right now. For buyers 55 and older who prefer walking into a Best Buy or Micro Center and picking something up in person, this is also one of the easier enclosures to actually find on a physical shelf, since it's been a steady seller for years rather than a newer online-only release. Number 5, Charge Disk Pro. This one is different from every other product on this list because it's not just an enclosure. It's a 5-in-1 hub with a sealed NVMe drive built right in. Pricing runs from $290 for the 1 TB version up to roughly $470 for 4 TB, according to official tier pricing reported by BitRebels. And AskCompares tested it directly and confirmed it. Includes HDMI 2.1 output supporting up to 8K at 30 Hz, 2 USB-A ports, and a built-in active cooling fan, all packed into something the size of a credit card at just 11 millimeters thick. The magnetic mount is the headline feature. It snaps directly onto compatible phones, turning your iPhone into a mobile editing rig with instant extra storage. But there's a real downside reviewers flagged. The SSD inside is sealed. You cannot upgrade it later, and you cannot swap it out if it fails. AskCompares also pointed out it doesn't even report drive temperature, despite having a cooling fan. This is a niche pick for creators who film and edit directly on their phone or Steam Deck and want one accessory instead of 5. For desktop users, this price doesn't make sense compared to what's coming up next. It's also worth noting the SSD inside uses 162-layer 3D TLC NAND, which is a genuinely modern flash type, not a budget chip dressed up in a premium shell. So the storage itself is solid. The limitation is entirely about flexibility, not raw quality. Number 4, Asus ROG Strix. Iolos. Asus launched this enclosure in February 2026 as the successor to the older ROG Strix Arian, and Tech Power Up's testing confirms it runs USB 3.2 Gen 2.2, hitting a theoretical 20 Gbps, roughly double the Sabrent enclosure we just covered. Pricing lands around $70, and Tech Power Up's reviewer called that a little steep compared to similarly spec'd 40 Gbps USB 4 enclosures available at the same price point. That's a fair criticism worth repeating here. What you get for that money: a dual M2 interface supporting both NVMe and SATA drives, a liquid silicone-coated aluminum body for passive cooling, and full RGB lighting synced through Asus's Aura ecosystem. Root Nation's hands-on review praised the build quality, noting the monolithic aluminum shell holds the SSD with zero wobble. The honest verdict here: this is built for gamers who already own ROG laptops or desktops and want lighting that matches their setup. If you don't care about RGB or you're not in the Asus ecosystem, the next 3 picks give you better raw value for the same or less money. Windows Forums coverage also pointed out that 20 GB DPS is a genuine sweet spot for most current Gen 3 and even some Gen 4 NVMe drives, since many of them don't actually need full 40 Gbps bandwidth to hit their rated sequential speeds. So you're not necessarily losing real-world performance here, you're mainly paying extra for styling and software. Number 3, OWC Express 1M2. This is where things get genuinely interesting because OWC's Express 1M2 has quietly become one of the most trusted names among Mac users, and the testing backs it up. TechPowerUp priced the empty enclosure at $120, and Macworld's lab testing recorded write speeds around 2,736 megabytes per second, and read speeds nearing 3,000 megabytes per second, using the Blackmagic Disk speed test, sustained over a full 30-minute stress run with no drop in performance. That last detail matters more than the raw number. Fstoppers and PC World both confirm this enclosure is completely fanless. The entire aluminum body acts as a passive heatsink, and it still handled a Samsung 990 Pro Gen 4 drive without throttling. For photographers and video editors who need silent, reliable storage during long export sessions, that thermal consistency is the real selling point, not the headline speed number. The downside is form factor. At 525 inches long and over 9 ounces, this isn't a pocket drive. It's built for a bag or a desk, not a jacket pocket. If portability matters more than thermal headroom for you, keep that in mind before buying. OWC also sells this enclosure preloaded with a factory-fitted drive, ranging from $220 for 1 TB up to roughly $1,900 for 8 TB, according to PC World's pricing breakdown. But most buyers get far better value buying the empty enclosure and pairing it with their own SSD instead. Number 2, TerraMaster D1 SSD Pro. Now we're into genuinely new territory for 2026. The TerraMaster D1 SSD Pro is one of the first consumer enclosures built around Thunderbolt 5, running at 80 Gbps, double the bandwidth of every product covered so far. TechPowerUp's independent lab testing recorded sustained transfers well over 7 GB per second, using a Samsung 990 Pro drive, numbers that simply aren't possible on Thunderbolt 4 hardware. PC World's separate review confirmed it edged out even OWC's competing 80 Gbps enclosure in several benchmark categories, while running cooler thanks to its massive finned aluminum body and completely fanless design. Pricing sits around $200 to $250 depending on retailer discounts, according to Storage Review and CNX software. That's a real investment, and it only makes sense if your computer actually has a Thunderbolt 5 port. Right now, that mostly means the newest Mac Mini and MacBook Pro models, plus select high-end Windows laptops. If you plug this into a regular USB-C port, you're paying for bandwidth you can't use. For working video editors handling 8K footage who already have Thunderbolt 5 hardware, Game Revolution's testing confirmed this is currently one of the fastest external SSD experiences money can buy. For everyone else, it's overkill, and that brings us to the enclosure that actually makes the most sense for most American buyers in 2026. It's also worth mentioning the chassis is completely fanless, CNC machined from aerospace-grade aluminum, and ships with a carrying case and a Thunderbolt 5 cable in the box. So unlike some competitors, you're not buying a bare enclosure and then hunting for the right cable separately. Number 1, Ugreen 40 DDPS. Enclosure? This is the enclosure that keeps winning head-to-head comparisons against far more expensive competitors, and the testing data explains exactly why. Built around the AS Media ASM2464 PDD chip, the same chip found in several premium enclosures costing twice as much, Ugreen's 40 Gbps enclosure runs full USB 4 and is Thunderbolt 4 certified, meaning it hits true 40 Gbps speeds on both Windows and Mac systems, unlike older USB standards that quietly drop speed on Apple hardware. Macworld's lab testing specifically noted that pairing it with a WD-SN855X drive let Ugreen's enclosures finish first and second in their comparison charts, ahead of pricier rivals. Ugreen's official US store lists the standard 40 Gbps fan-cooled model at $79.99, while the fanless heatsink version typically runs closer to $60 on Amazon. PC World confirmed the sensible total cost. Enclosure, plus a 1 to 2 terabyte drive, lands around $120 to $220 depending on capacity. It supports drive sizes from the compact 2230 up to the full-length 2280, with capacity support up to 8 terabytes. Some versions ship with an active cooling fan, others rely on a finned aluminum body for passive cooling. Check which version you're buying based on whether you plan to run sustained, heavy workloads. Hipster Pixel's hands-on testing also confirmed the build quality matches what you'd expect from a far pricier product, describing the sliding tool-free mechanism as solid and precise, with no wobble or flex, even after extended daily use. A small detail that matters if you're going to be opening and closing this enclosure regularly to swap drives. Here's the secret tip I promised you. The enclosure brand matters far less than people think. What actually determines your real-world speed is the bridge chip inside it. And the ASMedia ASM2464PD chip inside this U-Green model is the exact same chip premium brands charge double for. That's the entire reason it sits at number 1. For the price to performance balance, broad compatibility with both Mac and Windows, and certified Thunderbolt 4 support, this is the enclosure that fits the widest range of buyers: students, editors, gamers, and everyday backup users alike. Here's the simple breakdown. If you're on a tight budget, the Sabrent EC-SNVE gets the job done. If you want the best balance of speed and price for nearly any computer you own, the U-Green 40G BBSS enclosure is your safest pick. And if you already own Thunderbolt 5 hardware and need maximum speed for professional video work, the TerraMaster D1 SSD Pro is worth the premium. Drop a comment telling me which one you're picking. And if this saved you from buying the wrong enclosure, hit subscribe. I'm covering more storage comparisons like this every week.